Hello and welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video we're going to be unpacking Act 2 of William Shakespeare's Othello. Act 2, Scene 1. So from this act to the end of the play, we are situated in Cyprus, and this is a marked difference from Act 1, which was set in Venice. Venice is representative of order. We have the Duke there, we have senators, we have people in charge, we have a certain way that things must transpire, certain processes, whereas in Cyprus there is more freedom. And so this is going to be significant because this is when Iago's plan can come to fruition, and Iago can set about manipulating Othello and manipulating the other characters because there isn't that sense of Venetian order. The war with the Turks is called off as the Turkish fleet succumbs to the storm. So there's a big tempest, there's a big storm, the Turkish fleet is unable to even make it to Cyprus, and so there is no war. So this is quite a big deal because we have the war being introduced in like the previous scene, Act 3, Scene 1, and by Act 2, Scene 1, no, there's no more war. And obviously this is going to give space to Iago's plan because now there's no actually war for them to fight. There's nothing to, almost in inverted commas, distract them. Now they're going to be dealing with their personal issues, and Iago's plan is going to go off without a hitch. Cassio arrives first. Remember, Cassio is Othello's lieutenant. He was separated from Othello at sea due to the storm. The next ship that comes is Iago, Emilia, and Desdemona. So remember, Iago was given the responsibility of bringing Desdemona. Emilia is Iago's wife, but she is also Desdemona's attendant. And as they arrive, there's this conversation between the three of them, and we hear Iago say many sexist things about women. He talks about them being wildcats in their kitchen, this idea that women have this problem with appearance versus reality, that they appear to be these innocent people, but behind closed doors they're actually not so innocent. And during this exchange, we see Desdemona defends Emilia from Iago's taunts. And I think that's significant because Emilia doesn't say much in this scene, but later on she's going to be a key figure who goes against Iago and ultimately reveals the truth to defend Desdemona's honor. Othello finally arrives, and he and Desdemona make a show of their happiness to be with each other. They proclaim their delight and their love and their happiness, and all is very well. And now we're going to have Iago seeing this, and he is going to put his plan into action. So what he does is he instructs Rodrigo to pick a fight with Cassio to compromise Cassio's honor. And then we have a soliloquy where it is revealed to the audience why he is doing this and what he wants to do. So remember, we said we need to watch the development of how his motivations develop and how his plan ultimately develops. So he informs the audience that he's suspicious of both Cassio and Othello of sleeping with Emilia. He plans to manipulate Rodrigo into helping him execute his plan. Iago claims he wants to get Othello's praise as well as get revenge on him. Iago's plan is not entirely specific yet, but he's figuring it out. So here we don't just have he's not just going to try and manipulate Othello, he's going to get Cassio involved, and he's going to get Rodrigo involved. Act 2, Scene 2 is really short. A herald basically just announces the end of the war, so that's a key plot point. There is no war. We're going to be focusing on sort of the domestic lives of these main characters. Act 2, Scene 3, very big scene. We have the action really starting in this scene. So Cassio and Iago are speaking, and they are discussing Desdemona's beauty and attractiveness, and they really discuss this at length, which is quite sort of strange. Iago entices Cassio to drink, despite Cassio's protest that he prefers not to drink as he reacts badly to alcohol. So he tries to resist Iago's offer of some alcoholic beverage, and Iago insists that he drinks. Iago has another soliloquy where he sets out his planned development, which includes the step of making Cassio drunk and provoking him to do something offensive in front of a group of people. And this is significant because this is going to deprive Cassio of his reputation, which is going to lead to Iago's next step of the plan. Iago speaks with Montano about the virtue of Cassio and tells him of Cassio's drinking problem. This shows the complexity of the web of lies Iago is constructing and elucidates the theme of appearance versus reality. So Montano is the governor of Cyprus, and Iago, this point really just solidifies the complexity of the theme of appearance versus reality, because Iago speaks to Montano and he says, Cassio is such a great guy, what a wonderful person, but you know what, he has this drinking problem. So he's making up the story about Cassio's drinking problem, which theoretically, if we think about it, isn't maybe needed. It's sort of it's showing us the extra mile Iago is willing to go. And so here we see the reason why, for me, it elucidates the appearance versus reality, is it shows that Iago is not being truthful to any character. So even in his interaction with Montano, he's spewing a specific story. So even though when he's lying about a story, he makes up a different story for every single character that he interacts with. And so here he tells Montano that Cassio has a drinking problem to further undermine Cassio and to really degrade his reputation. Rodrigo provokes the drunk Cassio and Iago's orders, and Cassio drunkenly fights with Rodrigo and then Montano. Because Montano gets involved, he's like, oh, this guy, he has a drinking problem because what Iago has told him. Rodrigo acts blindly here. He just does what Iago says. And Iago, once Cassio is fighting with Montano, Iago orders Rodrigo to go cry mutiny. So that's a quote from the text. Basically, go and, wake up everyone, go tell everyone there's been this fight, there's been this mutiny. And this is all part of Iago's plan to make sure that Cassio's reputation and honor is diminished. Othello arrives and believes Iago's falsified version of events. He trusts Iago to the highest degree. He doesn't ask any questions. Iago tells the story and Othello listens to him blindly. And when you're reading the story of what Iago says, when you're reading this account, just notice how manipulative and how smart he is, the way he does it. He he says, I'd rather have my tongue cut out than speak badly about Cassio. And he really, really paints this picture of being this really trustworthy, honorable man who just wants to tell Othello the truth. So he's really, really clever. And you can see the power of rhetoric as well, the way he's able to use his language to convince Othello of what Cassio's done, which is bad, but also he's going to be so powerful with this language in that he's going to also convince Cassio that he's still his friend. Even though he has just betrayed him, Cassio is going to believe that Iago wants the best for him, which is quite a skill to have. Cassio is demoted and he's devastated at the loss of his reputation. So he is absolutely mortified. He feels like the fact that his reputation has been taken away from him and his job title, that he is, nothing. He has lost an integral aspect of himself. And there's a very good quote for that as well, which I think I put on the very first slide. He says it's like, it's an immortal part of him, and he feels bestial now that he doesn't have his reputation. So this theme of reputation and honor is incredibly significant because he feels like his reputation and honor is what makes him a human being. And so losing this reputation is really devastating. Iago pretends to be Cassio's friend and advises him to petition his case to be restored to his position of honor to Desdemona, as she has remarkable influence over Othello. So Iago says to Cassio, you know what? Desdemona has so much influence over Othello now, Othello's very angry with you, so don't go talk to him. But as a friend, this is what I would do. I would go and talk to Desdemona, and Desdemona will then talk to Othello about you and convince him that you should be reinstated. And Cassio is completely on board with this plan. He thanks Iago. He says, that's a brilliant idea. And then Iago explains to the audience what he's doing here. He says when Desdemona attempts to persuade Othello to forgive Cassio, he will make Othello believe that she's doing this because of her love of Cassio. So he plans that Cassio is going to speak to Desdemona, ask her to petition him. Desdemona, being the sweet person that she is, will go and speak to Othello and ask that he reinstates Cassio, and Iago will show or manipulate Othello into thinking the reason why she's asking this is because she loves Cassio and that they're having an affair. Rodrigo wants to give up and return to Venice as he feels that securing Desdemona is a lost cause. He doesn't see any progress, but Iago tells him to be patient, and he goes on a bit of a rant about being patient, and Rodrigo's like, okay, fine, I'll be patient, I'll wait a little bit longer. Iago explains to the audience that he will manipulate the situations, that Othello will see Cassio and Desdemona together and become incredibly and irrationally jealous. So on top of Desdemona now telling Othello to reinstate, or trying to convince Othello to reinstate Cassio, he's going to show Cassio and Desdemona together, and that's going to be sort of this one level of proof, in inverted commas, that Desdemona is having an affair. Iago hurries to set his plan in motion. He's like, let's get straight to it. Alright, so our themes, and as we mentioned in our Act 1 video, the themes are very important because they are usually used as the foundational element of potential essay topics. So, in this act, appearance versus reality, we clearly have Iago in this position here, and we have it in terms of his interactions with Othello, with Rodrigo, and with Cassio. Friendship and loyalty, also really significant and very much linked to appearance versus reality. Othello, undoubtedly and unquestionably believes Iago's tale of events because he believes that he's loyal to him and that he's a friend. Cassio also believes that Iago is his friend, and that is what is going to lead to such terrible things. And also ultimately, Othello is going to feel extremely betrayed by Cassio when he's convinced that Cassio is sleeping with Desdemona, and that's going to lead to the breakup of this friendship. We also see that loyalty for Othello, when he sees that Cassio has done something so horrendous and he's been fighting in a drunken way, he feels like he's lost, that Cassio is maybe not loyal to him and his cause and what he stands for. And so therefore he's very strict and harsh in the way that he punishes Cassio. Love, I suppose the love comes in scene 1, but maybe not in scene 3 in the big chunk of Act 2, but we see Desdemona and Othello's love for each other. Jealousy, well, Iago is just driven by jealousy at this point, and his plan is ultimately to make Othello jealous. Passion versus reason, this is really important. In Othello's reaction to Iago's tale about how Cassio drank and how he provoked this fight, I want you to consider whether his reaction was driven by passion, like anger, or if it was driven by reason and rationality. I would say to an extent there is that element of passion there, because he listens to Iago's story. He doesn't ask for Cassio to say anything or to corroborate the story or what actually happened. He listens to what Iago says, and he's very angry. When no one's talking to him, when no one's telling him what happened, he keeps pressing them. And so I think that his reaction is driven by passion in this instance, which is significant because it sort of starts this downward spiral of Othello, the fact that he's feeding into what Iago wants him to do. Reputation and honor, significant with Cassio. Remember, he is horrified that he's lost this integral aspect of himself, but also with Othello, because his reaction to Cassio's betrayal is also deemed to be, related to his reputation and his own honor, because if he's not seen to have punished Cassio for these actions, he's seen to have associated himself with them, which would have ultimately diminished his reputation and honor. So the fact that he acts so viciously or very harshly, and he makes this harsh decree to Cassio, is an act of preservation regarding his reputation and honor. Also, Iago's reputation and honor, because his reputation and his honor is believed. Yeah, it appears to be the one that should be listened to. And you'll notice throughout the play, everyone calls him Honest Iago, Honest Iago. His reputation precedes him. And he's actually the one who admits that reputation may be false, because his reputation is ultimately false. But for Cassio and Othello, his reputation and honor is such a key aspect of their lives. And this was important in Shakespearean times. It was important, in these old Venetian times as well. Racial prejudice, there's always this underlying racial prejudice when these characters are interacting with Othello, especially when, for Iago and Rodrigo, when they're acting in a they're trying to resist Othello and they hate him. There's always that undercurrent, but the predominant evidence for racial prejudice can be seen in Act 1. Betrayal and trust, so we discussed that. Cassio has almost betrayed Othello's, sort of doctrine of honor. And Iago betrays everyone ultimately, even though they trust him a great deal. And then fate versus free will. So here, once again, for me, free will usually reigns supreme. But we do see elements of destiny and fate here, because if Othello is going to act that way regarding Cassio, we can see how he might be led to believe, or how he might be led to act in a certain way, in a violent way, like he will, or in a passion-driven way, like he will when he encounters Desdemona's supposed affair. But also in terms of free will, because Iago is acting, right? Nothing's just happening because of destiny. He is acting, and those actions are leading to further actions, which is ultimately going to lead to the tragedy. I hope that video has been helpful. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you back here for Act 3.